The Galwan pushback, should China be trusted? It's very important to understand what exactly has happened, what have the Chinese said, and what has the Indian establishment said as de-escalation process has begun. Here's Vishnu Shom with the details.
This is the area that we are actually talking about. Galwan to the right, hot springs to the right, and the Pangong Lake. In the hot springs and Galwan area, hot springs also in that area, there's a place called Gogra. These areas have seen some changes today, very important ones. Pangong, not really so far. But let's zoom in more and take a look at the next slide that we have over here. This is a very important picture because what you see over here is Galwan to the north, the hot springs area, Pangong to the south, and the yellow dots that you see are the actual Chinese build-up in this entire area. We've collated it with OSINT experts, satellite experts, to where they actually stand. In Galwan, they were right on the line of actual control. They have gone back from there. And as I mentioned, in Hot Springs and in Gogra, they've reduced tents, they've reduced men on the ground, but they haven't yet gone back. Their incursion in some of those areas, approximately a kilometer and a half. Let's go to the next image now and give you an idea of the Galwan Valley itself. This is important because if you look at the clash point that is clearly marked out, and then to the south of it is that 2-kilometer area, and between the clash point and that 2-kilometer area are a number of sites where the Chinese had positions. Those are areas which have been vacated mostly. More than 1 kilometer of the Chinese positions have been vacated. So let's also now look at some of the other areas. This is also specific to Galwan. Why is Galwan so important? This is where there was nothing other than one tent on the 22nd of May. But then, as you can see, the Chinese after this built up that area. This is all within Indian territory. Let's go from picture to picture to picture. This is the 16th of June, the next image on the 22nd of June, the next image on the 25th of June. The total incursion in this area, 423 meters. But as we've mentioned, they are going back. They've done so by more than a kilometer at this stage from Galwan. Let's take a look now at the other area that we are talking about. This image is from Gogra, that was further south. You can actually see tanks over here and you can see artillery pieces. This is on the Chinese side, but in this area there was also a Chinese incursion. They have reduced soldiers on the ground and they've reduced tents on the ground as well. Finally, let's move further south, and the Pangong Lake area that you see over here, it's southeast of Leh, the capital of Ladakh, is where there has not been anything significant to report on at the moment. Why is Pangong Lake important? It is important because there are 186, and I counted this myself, Chinese structures, by which I mean homes that you see over, shelters that you see over there, tents and other structures within a range of 5 to 6 kilometers, which India used to once patrol, the Chinese not allowing us at all. These are those structures that you see in Pangong. Let's go to the next couple of images on Pangong. In one particular area, there's a symbol on the ground with the Chinese saying that, look, this is ours. So as far as Pangong is concerned, at this juncture, there's not really been any move on the ground. But one final point, up till the 14th of this month is when there was a time period given by which time the Chinese were supposed to leave. Hopefully the boundary, the buffer zones between the forces are maintained, hopefully in the future, by police forces.
And now here are the three things that we must know. All that Vishnu told you over there, these three things are of paramount importance as of this moment. Point number one, and that is very significant. We will have to verify over time whether this de-escalation is actually happening or not. Can we trust the Chinese? On so many occasions they've betrayed. Number two, there has to be a mechanism for monitoring this buffer zone. So if these two forces are going back, who's going to monitor whether there is any fresh incursion taking place? And number three, will China cooperate in maintaining a pre-June 15 status quo? Because India wants that. But what about China? To join us on this and other issues, we've got General Bikram Singh, former Chief of Army Staff. Thank you very much, General Singh. How would you respond, sir? I want to know from you, General Singh. Can we, this is a fundamental question. They've claimed to be moving back, but can you trust them?
Well, Sankit, I don't think so. We should throw caution to the winds, though it's a very positive development, no doubt about it. But then, as you said earlier, I think we've got to treat it with cautious optimism. we got to see that the Chinese have they actually been under pressure because of the multi-pronged strategy that India had adopted in concert with some of our strategic partners like the United States. Has it had a salutary impact on China or not? Because that is very important to understand. Because if it has had, then China will not venture out to get back again, and perhaps over time will perhaps even de-link and get back from the area of Pangang So. Now, let's see what has happened. I think the most important thing that happened was a statement by the Prime Minister from Ladakh, which actually put China under pressure. And they conveyed the national intent and the political intent that, look, we mean business this time, and we are not going to take it lying down. That was one point. Coupled with this is the multi-pronged other initiatives, whether on the economic front, on the military front, on the diplomatic front, the information operations, courtesy you gentlemen, all media houses have played very well. Now, let me bring out the aspect of economy firstly. Economy as a weapon we have used for the first time against China. And I think the groundswell which had got generated after we lost two of our brave hearts, at Galwan, that was something which turned the tide against China. And though the baby steps were taken initially, but whatever initiatives have been put in place by the government on the economic front have actually begun and given a realization to China that it is not going to be the same old game again. And plus, China is at the moment entangled with the trade war with the United States. It has actually, if you come to think of it, in the UN Security Council, I beg your pardon, US WRC, where WHC, where 27 countries had challenged the stance of China, very high-handed stance of China in Hong Kong and against the Uyghurs. 27 developed countries, majority of them have actually not stood by China. So China has understood that economically, if these countries are not with them, and these countries include countries like, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Japan, Canada,
so they felt
all these
cornered.
countries. Yeah, it's feeling cornered. So economy has had a very, very important,
but then General Singh,
important impact.
If I were to then add on, and I know at this moment this is going to be extremely hypothetical. See, at a time when there is a mood in this country against Chinese products, against China as a country, and we are leading to some sort of economic distancing with the Chinese, coupled with our Atmanirbhar campaign and strategy. It's not like once these skirmishes go down and we've given China the jitters, we are going to go back to Chinese products. I think this is in more ways than one irreversible, our economic sanctions and actions against them. Then are we to expect aggression again? And I come back to the original point, can you then trust them with this de-escalation?
No, Sankit, look, the message has been conveyed. More importantly is the strategic messaging at the political level and economic level. Let's be very clear, the economies of both the countries are integrated. Let's be very clear. And it will take time. Though, we've taken some initiatives. We've cancelled some projects which are in the pipeline. 59 apps that have been actually done away with. It is making an impact. The message has gone. More important is the messaging to China from the political and economic front, as also the military, that look, things are very different. Because let's see, with the two carrier groups that have moved into South China Sea, China is definitely on the back foot. Things are bad. On the military front, we have stood, our ground. We've been very firm. Air Force has been flying its, fighter aircrafts, and we've been showing our, air power in that area of Ladakh. So the messages have gone nice and proper to China. I do not think it will straight away get on to, doing what it has been doing. It will wait and watch. But definitely, let me tell you, Xi Jinping requires a face saver. China came in thinking that, India would buckle under pressure and won't react the way we have done it.
That they will bulldoze.
China definitely requires a face saver. And from that point of view, I personally feel, while it may carry out these kind of, movements backwards, get back by about a kilometre and two, Pangang So it is likely to stay on for a while, till such time, it is able to find some kind of a face saver to get back to status quo. And
see, General Singh, I'm sure Arunachal will continue to remain the flashpoint that it is. I want to know from you, General Singh, before we let you go, what militarily should be our strategy from here on as China claims to be entering into a de-escalation exercise? More patrolling, more infrastructure building? What do you suggest?
You see, look, there are the two levels that we handle these. Tactical level, you brought out yourself, got to have some kind of a mechanism to verify whether they have actually gone back or not and what their intent is. And let me tell you, we have enough technology to actually pinpoint where their Chinese buildup is. And we can find out that's not an issue at all. That can be done. The other thing is that we must continue to remain on guard, alert. We must build up along the entire border, not just in this area. We should keep our front with, with Pakistan again. We should be alert for any kind of a misadventure by Pakistan. Cyber operations, we got to guard against, put
Correct.
our firewalls, have our defensive and offensive capability totally, ramped up. Then, at the strategic level, when you look at military, I'm glad the Prime Minister brought out, that infrastructure is being given 3 times more money in the budget. Along with that, I think we need to actually also hasten up our modernization and perhaps look back at a combat power which will not only have the defensive capability, but also give to the political
Sure.
leadership, a great chunk of Chinese territory in their area, so that the politicians at the end of the war can negotiate from a position of strength.
Okay.
So that's the kind of combat power we have to develop on our own and
Sure.
not rely entirely on external forces.
Absolutely, absolutely. General Singh, thank you so much for your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us right here on NDTV. Let me now introduce our other guests to speak, speak their mind, what they feel should be done or needs to be done. I've got Aina Tangin, political analyst and economic affairs commentator from Beijing. Ambassador KC Singh, former diplomat, is going to join us in just a short moment. Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain is also with us, and Michael Kugelman, Deputy Director and Senior Associate for South Asia Program, is also with us. Thank you so much, you gentlemen. Lieutenant General Hasnain, let me begin with you. Would you concur? Would you agree with General Singh when he says that more infrastructure? You can't just straight away go with blind faith and trust.
Absolutely. I mean, every single word, Sanjit, which General Bikram Singh has spoken needs to be reinforced. I mean, he has given out the entire strategy the way it needs to be looked at. On the issue of trust, you see, China hasn't built itself a reputation at all. We are all aware of it. What it has done in the South China Sea, the aspect of the implementation of the judgment of the International Court of Justice, and anything else. I mean, it just does not seem to be having the credibility. With that kind of a backdrop, there is no question. We've seen what happened after the 6th of June. We've seen what happened after the 22nd of June when the second meeting took place between the corps commanders on the either side. Nothing moved. The Chinese are known to drag their feet. The Chinese are known to obfuscate. And you will find an information campaign building up thereafter. You will find that there will be a tremendous amount of obfuscation to put us off, to divert our attention in different areas. And in the middle of it, there could still be a small engagement here and there. So I think you really need to keep our guard up. And as General Bikram Singh said, verification is a very important part.
Correct.
Patrolling which must continue and verification. And I think the Prime Minister has given a very strong strategic message by his presence at Leh. They're backing the troops, demonstrating the political will and the political capability to back the military. I think that was something which was actually just waiting for it to happen. So infrastructure-wise, the last point of mine, infrastructure, no question. Yes, we have still wanting. We have much to do on it. And on capability development, we are far behind China still.
I mean, building infrastructure should not be seen as some sort of a provocation by the Chinese. It's as simple as that. This cannot be seen as provocation or aggression or escalation, as the Chinese dubbed the Prime Minister's visit to Leh. It's just unfortunate. Aina Tangin, let me come to you. Just a short moment ago, we've got details from the Foreign Ministry where they say that at a time when we are being cautious, there is a sense of cautious optimism that we want things to get better, but at the same time, you can't blame us for being cautious. So even while there is tension, it's very, very important to keep communication in place. Do you think that is critical?
Absolutely.
Constant communication.
Trust and faith saving are a two-way street, and they take time. The nature of dispute is that both sides think they're right. Personally, I respect both generals and their opinions. They're excellent men of arms, but I really think that this is something for the diplomats to take care of. I mean, when I hear a general say that what I want to do is take the high ground, get the strategic position, and let everybody else, my side, negotiate from a position of strength, that does not sound very trustworthy. So let's give the foreign affairs people a chance to settle things down and see what happens. In terms of the economics, it's, we have a saying in the U.S., don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Yes, you will hurt China to the tune of about 2% of its exports, but China could lose 15% of its exports to China, 15%, which is the total exports if you add China and Hong Kong together. That would not be good for India. So at this point, it would be better if both nations cooled off, got to an understanding about what it was that they're so concerned about. Why is the need for all of this infrastructure? What is really at play? I don't think that India wants to invade China. I don't think China wants to invade India. They certainly would be best off trying to figure out how to be good neighbors, or at least peaceful neighbors. So at this point, as I said, it's better that the diplomats are
Mr. Tangin, while I agree with what you say, see, it's very clear that India has no interest in invading or in expansionism. But you look at history, you look at all of Chinese borders disputes, and you would see that there is perhaps a track record that speaks of perhaps an effort in expansionism, an expansionistic mindset. I think that's what is at play here.
Well, I would beg to differ. If you study Chinese history, it's quite clear that they tend to be very inward-facing. I mean, after their great admiral sailed the seas, they burnt all the boats because they didn't feel that the rest of the world really offered them anything. Since that time, they've built things like the Great Wall to keep people out, not to use it as a forward base to invade other countries. So I think the mentality, at least in China, is very much control what you think is yours. Now, obviously, there's a dispute here. But remember, these lines were not drawn by Indians or by Chinese. Correct. They were drawn by a foreign colonial power that was intent on creating mischief. And they certainly have. I would ask everyone to think very carefully. 150 years ago, colonial powers pitted India and China against each other to prevent their rise and allowed them to take the fruits of both countries. Hopefully, this will not happen again.
No, while I agree, Mr. Tangin, that this is a long-standing negotiation on trying to figure out where exactly is the LAC, because that's at the center of this dispute, right? It's very clear. So my point is that this is exactly what has not happened. The people in foreign affairs, the diplomats, have not been able to be successful. That's why this matter became military in nature. So this is going to be a complicated situation, as you seem to be pointing out. But Michael Kugelman, how do you look at this dispute and what it may or may not do in the region? See, these are economic superpowers, and as general and expert after expert seem to suggest that what got the Chinese a little jittery was when India took a step beyond the usual, some sort of economic distancing. Do you think that has worked? What's your assessment?
Well, I think what's most important at this point is that the dialogue process that went into place back on June 6th is still in place, and I think that it's encouraging that there is a dialogue process that's still in place. The problem is that talks can be both a blessing and a curse. So they can be a blessing because talks will allow each side to start winding down and de-escalating, but they can also be a curse in the sense that it buys time for parties to plan future provocations. And I would agree with what our Indian colleagues said, that we need to be very careful and cautious about this news, that there are perhaps starting to be some Chinese disengagements. China, to me, remains a very emboldened foe of India. And the notion of wolf warrior diplomacy does not lend itself to sudden unilateral concessions, so to speak. So I would be curious to know what India has been asked to do. If we're hearing that China is withdrawing, what does that mean for India? What is India committed to doing at the same time? That would be important to hear. How far back are these pullbacks? Do we know that? I think that's also something else to put out there. But in terms of your broader question, I think it's quite clear that there were a number of factors at play that sparked this crisis and got it to the point where it is now. One is what I said before, that China over the last year or so has taken on an increasingly assertive and one could argue muscular and even aggressive foreign policy around the world, not just in Ladakh. We see what it has done in the South China Sea. We see what it has said about Taiwan. We see what it has been doing in Hong Kong. That certainly is raising a lot of concerns for the United States. And I think that what we've seen China do in Ladakh over the last few months, I think, is perhaps a reflection of this broader policy that has become increasingly assertive, muscular, even aggressive. Certainly, if you want to talk about regional implications, obviously the Pakistan factor will loom quite large here. I would not want to overstate this notion of some type of three-front conflict or anything like that. There's been a number of speculative points about that. I wouldn't go that far. But I think that, sitting here in Washington, I think that the main thing to be concerned about is that June 15th changed everything. When you had that deadly exchange, that incredibly deadly exchange in the Galwan Valley, that transformed the line of actual control into the type of global flashpoint that it arguably had not been up to that point. And I think that policymakers here are going to be paying a lot more closer attention to that than they had been previously.
Okay. Ambassador K.C. Singh is also with us. Ambassador Singh, how much can conversation and diplomacy help in a situation like this? See, India has changed the status quo. There was a general understanding among the Chinese and also among the Indians, so is what the government likes us to believe, that there was a set pattern of engagement. Now that pattern has changed. Obviously, the circumstances of June 15th have forced that pattern to change. How much effectively can diplomacy and conversation fix this or soothe the frayed nerves?
Well, through the first phase till June 15 and thereafter, you saw the military-to-military talks and diplomacy didn't help. Then Prime Minister went up there, went to Ladakh and he spoke. Then it had gone to the highest political level. And we started taking action, etc., cancelling, delisting their Chinese apps, threatening to take other punitive measures which affect their trade, etc. Although that's not a major component of Chinese trade, but it was sending a signal that now Chinese had crossed a line, and beyond that, it was only going to get worse. Therefore, it had to be, what followed was the Wang Yi Doval dialogue, which is really a discussion between the special representatives who are supposed to deal with the border. But it's very interesting, these statements which have come out of Delhi and the one which has come out of China. There is a difference between them. Because what we are hearing from Delhi is essentially that there should be respect and observance of the line of actual control, and that no unilateral action should be taken to alter the status quo. But the status quo has already been altered. So will we go back to the previous? Now look at the language the Chinese have used. Now they are saying meet us halfway. Now they've already come halfway. So what do you mean meet us halfway? They've already come up to the position of their claim lines in a number of places. So halfway means that they've already established their claim.
Correct.
So if they go back 2 kilometers, they're asking you to step back from their claim line. That is their idea, I think, of halfway. Then they said you must guide public opinion. Now this is being sanctimonious. What do you mean public opinion? Of course, the public opinion is agitated in India. The implication of this is that India is somehow ramping, heating up the public opinion in India. So it's the government of India's job to quieten things down here. And third is they are saying safeguard normal exchanges. Now, does that mean that they expect us to take back all the steps that we've taken against the applications, against possibly their investments? That decision had been taken earlier on Chinese investments in critical sectors. Yeah, and then of course they talk about agreements and so on and so forth. Now this is a typically Chinese way of doing it. They've done it in South China Sea, they've done it elsewhere. You occupy a lot of area, then you start conceding a little bit. and then you become sanctimonious and preach, and then you appear very reasonable, and thereafter, you basically resist what you don't want to give up. So the essential thing is, now look at the new border, new question they've opened up in eastern Bhutan. Why is it eastern Bhutan? Because that is outflanking Tawang, which they are critically interested in Arunachal. Because if they create a wedge between Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh, then they are really coming at Arunachal Pradesh from a flank, and that outflanks Tawang there. So, you settle something and then you open a new front. So let's be very clear. This is a tactical readjustment. India also needs it. We have a pandemic.
And I guess
strategically nothing has changed. Strategically, they want to be the dominant power. They've sent you a signal. We can move very rapidly, and at the line of actual control, inconvenience you, embarrass the government.
So this is exactly why, Ambassador Singh, Mr. Tangen, Lieutenant General Hasnain, as well as Michael Kugelman. I'm afraid that's all the time I have.